If you make video content, there are likely some things that you're doing that are getting in the way of making better videos. In this video, I'm gonna cover 10 common mistakes that I see people make when it comes to making videos and give you some ideas for what you can do better and how you can fix it. Now, these are in no particular order. Let's just start with number 1, which is winging it. Now, when you don't script or at least outline your video, it ends up creating a subpar video because often you'll just ramble, kind of lose your train of thought, or you'll go all over the place. And it's just mentally draining when you're trying to film and come up with all this stuff on the spot. It also takes more time to edit because of all that rambling, and you got to cut stuff out and figure out how to splice it together. So you're just better off at least outlining your video, if not scripting your video. That way you can make sure that you cover everything you want to cover. You can add any quotes or stats or things you want to make sure you remember to say. And for sure, you want to plan your hook or the beginning of your video and then some kind of call to action. Now, some people do like to script it word for word, and if that's you, then I want to recommend doing a practice session where you read it out loud and make sure that it sounds good when you speak it. We write differently than we speak, so sometimes as you're writing it, you might think, oh, this sounds really great. And then when you go to film it and say it, it just sounds funny. Like, we don't always write in the same way we speak. And if you don't rehearse it, that's probably what's going to happen. So make sure you go through your script, read it out loud, and make sure that it sounds good when you speak it. And if it doesn't, you can just change it there. And that way you're not trying to change it on the fly when you're filming. Number 2 is bad lighting. Now, this shows up in a few different ways. The first one would be there's just not enough light and you're too dark. But actually, more often what I see is too much light, and not necessarily that it's too bright, but that there's no shadowing on your face. We actually want a little bit of shadowing on the face because it adds a little bit of depth and interest and it helps frame the jawline. Otherwise, your face looks really flat and it lacks dimension and just doesn't look as good as it could. So the way to fix that is to not have 2 lights on either side of the camera or not have one light like right in the middle. You want to move it off to one side and then up a little bit, throw a little bit of shadowing on one side of your face. Another thing I'll see is being backlit where there's too much light behind you. So maybe there's like a window or a door with a window in it, and there's a lot of light coming through that. And if you don't have a strong enough light in front of you to compensate for that, it just makes for a really ugly looking video. And then I see people using ring lights, and ring lights just suck. Don't use a ring light. They don't look good. If you put it right in front of you like most people do, it doesn't add any nice shadowing. And then you have that weird catch light in your eye where you kind of look like a demon. Just don't do it. So if that's you, chuck the ring light and get a softbox kit. They're not very expensive and they look so much better. I'll link to some options in the description. Lighting is a key factor in high quality videos, and it can be kind of challenging to get it right. I put together a free training to help you take your videos from amateur to awesome. And in that training, I actually cover 3 different types of lights that you need to make your videos look awesome. So head over to glacierrockmedia.com/studio and grab that free training today. Number 3 is bad audio. If your audio sucks, your video sucks, and there's no way around that. It can look amazing and what you have to say is amazing, but if the audio is really poor quality, people instantly discount what you have to say. So the most common issue here is that people aren't using a mic at all. They use the built-in mic on their phone or camera, and it just sounds like crap, and you really can't make that sound good. So at bare minimum, at least invest in a cheap wired lav mic that you can clip on your shirt and plug into your phone or camera. It really does make a night and day difference, and I'll link to some options in the video description. Now, another cause of really poor audio, and I see this quite a bit, is they actually have a microphone, but they have it set too far away from them. Now, this mic is inches from my mouth, maybe 3 or 4 inches max, and it sounds really good. When a mic is close, you get what's called the proximity effect, and so there's a little bit more low end and bass frequency response in your voice, and it just sounds a lot better. Now, when the mic is too far away, you don't get the proximity effect, and it picks up a ton of background noise. It picks up echo from your voice echoing in the room, and because it's far away, you have to turn up the volume a little bit, and then it just really accentuates all that stuff you don't want. And if you've got one that sits on your desktop like this, it just has to be closer to your mouth. So do what you have to do to get it closer. Now, another mistake I see people make with mics specifically like this, a condenser mic, is that they'll talk into the top of it. Now, this mic is a dynamic mic and the capsule is pointing out the end, so you do want to talk into it. A condenser mic, the capsule is actually in the front, sometimes on the front and the back, depending on what it is, not in the top. So if you're angling it like this, talking into the top of it, it's actually pointing down and getting your voice bouncing off your desk. It's not going straight into the mic and it's not going to sound as good. So make sure you're talking into the front of the mic. And if you're not sure which side is the front, as silly as that sounds, this blue mic, it's not obvious which side is the front. And this mic has a setting where you can change the pickup pattern, which dictates where the mic will pick up sound from. And so you can set it to pick up in an overall circle, a figure 8, or from the front and back. So if you have a mic like that, make sure it's set to pick up the sound from just in front of it, and make sure you do a test to find out which side is the front. So talk into one side, turn it around, talk into the other side. listen back, and whichever one is louder, that's the front. In general, I do not recommend condenser mics for people. Instead, get a dynamic. Now, if you're needing to get a mic, I did a video on my best recommendations for mics, starting from the highest quality, and they're a little bit more expensive, down to the lower budget mics that still sound pretty good, but cost a lot less money. So if you're needing a mic, check that out. And you can click this little card up here in the corner. One last common mistake that I see people make when it comes to audio is if they have a shotgun mic, they'll mount it on top of their camera. And that's a big no-no. Like most mics, shotgun mics are designed to be closer. So when they're that far away, it's almost as bad as just using the built-in mic on your camera. So if you want to use a shotgun mic, and that's okay, they can sound really good, get a boom arm or a stand so you can mount it properly. So number 4 is bad framing. So in video, we call the frame like what you see in the video. And the framing is how you're positioning everything on the screen within that window. People often recommend going by the rule of thirds, where if you picture this tic-tac-toe board on the screen, you want your eyeballs to be on that top third. I often actually will go above that. I feel like that often leaves too much room above your head, because here's the number one thing that I see most people do wrong, and that is they're way too low. So like put their head in the middle of it and there's all this space above you. And so leaving all this room above you, one, it just looks weird. I look really small right now in this frame because like it just looks so much better when I'm filling the frame. And if we're going to cut this into shorts to do micro content on, like an Instagram reel or Facebook reels or TikTok, you would have to zoom in order for the words like to not be on my face, so that you can kind of move me up in the frame. And then my face is going to be the whole thing, and it just is not going to look very good. So there's a lot of reasons why you don't want so much space above your head. So this is actually the first thing that I do with all the clients that I work with and people who are asking for advice with their videos, is we fix their framing, because they often have way too much space above their head. Now, conversely, some people might not have enough room above their head, and so like part of their head might be cut off. My chair is all the way up. I can't go any higher up. But if you're up here, let me just stand awkwardly here. If you're up here and part of your head is cut off, like you just don't want your head cut off. So don't cut off your head. What I do is I try to have enough space to where there's a little bit of space above my head, so I'm not risking cutting off my hair or my head, but I'm not so low that there's just all this wasted space. So I just kind of go for like there. I think that looks pretty good. Another common thing people do is they'll be too close. So they're going to be really zoomed up. So let me scoot up here. So here we're going to have kind of the same problem. Now I could angle this down so that I would have the headroom, but when you're so close to it, again, if we're going to cut this into shorts and go, like a vertical phone screen, your face is going to be the whole thing. And it's just like, sometimes I have clients that do this. They were too close to when they made the video. And so when we cut shorts, they're filling up the whole screen with their face. And they're like, can you fix that? And the answer is no. If you would have fixed your framing, yeah, we could have fixed that. But you can't fix that after the fact unless you like put a little square and like design a graphic around it. And you can do that, but it just doesn't look as good. And then also I see people sit too far away. And now, at least when you're further away, you can zoom in a little bit when you edit, but the more you zoom in when you edit, the more quality loss you get. So you have to kind of be careful. You don't want to sit too far back and have to zoom in all the time, but also not be so close, because you can't zoom out in a video. Number 5 is an ugly background, or what I often will see is people up against a wall. So when you're up against a wall, there's no depth or dimension to your video, and it just feels kind of claustrophobic. Now, people might not have that actual wording like, oh, this video feels claustrophobic, but there's something about it that just doesn't feel good. Now, I get it if where you make videos, you're very limited as to what you can do. Sometimes they just don't have anything nice in the room, so they're going to be up against a wall. And if you have to do that, then I would recommend putting a light behind you and shining on the wall. So that'll add a little bit of texture and a little bit of change or difference in the background to break it up a little bit, so it's not just one blank, boring wall. Then you want to make sure that it's clutter-free, that there's not a bunch of junk and clutter in the background. You don't want people to focus on what's in your background instead of on you. So do everything you can to eliminate distraction and just make it look as nice as it can. And just spend a little bit of time of kind of moving around, changing where you are, changing where the camera is, maybe move your desk around, and find the best spot where you can have the most distance and space between you and the background. And sometimes what you might need to do to maximize the space behind you is to angle it. You could put the camera or your desk kind of in the corner, angle it towards the other corner, and then that'll give even more space and room behind you. Now, whatever you do, please do not use those ghetto, fake, blurry backgrounds. They just look so bad. I've never seen one and thought, wow, that looks really good. I can't even tell that they're Using a filter, no, you can always tell and it always looks bad. So put in some time, clean up your background and make it look as good as it can. Number 6, there's no call to action. You want to make sure every video you do has some kind of call to action. Those call to actions that are a little bit more of an ask, I would call those hard call to actions. So like, hey, buy this course, set up a call. The things that are just a bit more of an ask, I would call more of a hard call to action. And then you have soft call to actions where you might ask them to like and subscribe, or you might ask them to share or drop a comment or something like that. And then there's some call to actions that are in between. So my favorites are actually using a lead magnet of some sort where there's some kind of free resource that's valuable, not just a piece of junk, but something that actually adds value and that gives your ideal client a quick win. So you can build up your email list, nurture those relationships, and then eventually turn cold leads into paying clients. So make sure every video you do has a call to action of some sort. And I like to plan these in advance, so I'm not trying to think of it at the time of filming. Number 7 is taking too long to get to the meat of your video. Now, I don't know about you, but I've seen my fair share of videos where people just took forever to get to the video. I see so many videos where people just blab about themselves and they're trying to be helpful. They're trying to give some context and background of who they are and why you should trust them. But I think the content should just speak for itself. You really don't need that. If what you say is good, they're going to watch it. They don't need your entire life story or even the history of whatever it is that you're talking about in order to get the value of what you're providing in your video. So start with a hook or a really short description of who this video is for and how it helps them, and then get into it as soon as you can. All right, number 8 is making one video at a time. Now, I can't always tell this just by looking at your videos, but I talk to enough people to know that a lot of times this is what people are doing. Now, there's a lot of work that goes into making videos. Sometimes there's setup of lights and the mic and cameras. Unless you've got a setup like me where it's just always there and I just turn things on, there might be some setup involved. And that's such a waste because you're in the zone. It'll be a lot easier to knock out a few more videos right after that. Now, you can do 3 to 6 months worth of content in one day, and I know this because I do it with clients. But at a bare minimum, I would suggest doing at least 1 month's worth of content in one session. That way you're only having to prep for that one session, and then you're done for a month. Now, I see this next one all the time, and it's a really small, subtle tweak you can make that makes a big difference. So number 9 is not looking at the camera lens. So whether you're using a phone or a camera or your computer, people will look at themselves instead of the lens. I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with someone who won't look you in the eyes, but it's really awkward. And that's essentially what's happening when you're looking at yourself instead of the lens. So if you're on a phone, just flip it around and then you can't even look at yourself. You have to look at the lens. If you're on a computer, you just have to use discipline and look at the lens, stop looking at yourself. And if you're using a camera that maybe has a flip screen, stop looking at that and look at the lens. It's subtle, but it makes a big difference. It makes it feel much more personal, like you're actually talking to the person, and it really helps build more connection. Number 10 is low energy or a boring tone of voice. Now, I'm not saying you need to be someone that you're not. You don't have to be all fake and phony. Just be a little bit more of who you already are. Imagine you're talking to someone about something you're really passionate about. Or like when you're at a party and you've maybe had a couple beverages to help loosen you up. It's a little bit easier to be freer, a little more expressive, maybe a little more louder in volume. That's really all it takes. Just add a little bit more movement, a little bit more volume to your voice, and maybe just a little bit more change in the tone of your voice so that it's not just a boring monotone all the time. No, I totally get this one, and I have to push myself on this because if you meet me in just normal conversation, I don't put a lot of energy into my voice. So just a little more energy, a little more volume, a little more movement. That's really all it takes. A couple things you can do just to have a little bit more energy is maybe have a little bit more coffee or caffeine. You can pump some music and like jump around for a little bit, kind of get the blood flowing. You can do some push-ups. There's anything you can do to get a little bit more blood pumping and to ramp up your energy a little bit. So hopefully there was at least one thing you can get from that and make your videos a little bit better. If there was, I'd love to hear about it. If you could just drop down and let me know in the comments, I'd love to hear what that was for you. And if you're serious about making really high quality content, I've put together a free training that spells out everything you need to take your videos from amateur to awesome. So head over to glacierrockmedia.com/studio and grab your free training today. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.